Boy, I can't wait to play some Hitman. I know the gaming industry has been pushing for more advanced graphics since its inception, but hear me out. We didn't need to go past Modern Warfare 3 when it came to graphical fidelity. Uncharted 4 is a beautiful masterpiece of a game, which pushed the envelope for graphics in games, yeah. But saying that alone forgets to mention how the game is also a main menu simulator, where you have to sit down for upwards of a goddamn hour for it to cache shaders before you can actually play the game. The modern Call of Duty games are the same. Anytime it receives a 2 MB patch, you better buckle up for another half hour of waiting to be able to play the game after you launch it. For comparison, let me quickly showcase how long it takes to actually get to play some modern titles from some older ones, starting from the game launching to being able to actually access gameplay. Warhammer 3, released in 2022, 2.5 minutes. Battle Brothers, 2017, 15 seconds. Jedi Survivor, 2023, 4 entire minutes. Synthetic, 2018, 8 seconds. Deus Ex? Sorry, not this one, the other one. Deus Ex 1 from 2000 clocks in at 7 goddamn seconds. And Deus Ex slaps you in the face with this when you start the game, and a cutscene you have to skip on top of that. The takeaway here is that increased complexity doesn't necessarily result in longer loading times. A game like Synthetic is obviously going to want to get you in the action as fast as possible with it being a roguelike, but every game will benefit from that sped up pace. Having to wait a minute for Warhammer to launch, another 2 minutes to get past the main menu and into my campaign, and then another minute on top of that to load into a battle is a huge reason I don't ever want to touch that game. All of that is in service of a carnage which I can't pay attention to because I'm busy microing my units so that I don't lose the entire game. On top of that, the game looks significantly worse than it could because I'm forced to run it at 1080p rather than 4K because otherwise it runs like big rigs. Realistic graphics often don't even look the most appealing. Heavily stylized games almost always look better in my opinion, and consistently hold up far better than those striving for realism. On a purely technical level, Deep Rock isn't particularly impressive, but look at it. It's gorgeous to look at, and that simplistic style means you can pretty much have this game perma-installed on every hamburger in your home. Ghost Ship's mastery of lighting and particle effect carry this game's visual fidelity so intensely, and it's perfect because it both looks and runs fantastic. You might remember this little indie classic called, Minecraft. You know how terrible this game looks with, quote, photorealistic packs on? A simpler style makes games a lot more accessible, readable, and frankly playable. Absolute perfect example is Halo Combat Evolved. When playing CE, you have two options. The higher polygon count version, or the version that's significantly easier to read. Making out a streak of distinctive color on a dark background in old graphics is way easier than the muddy streak on the equally muddy backgrounds of new graphics. This is not at all even mentioning the art direction obliteration that also occurred between the two versions. Old graphics are just straight up better purely from a gameplay perspective. Even if you want a somewhat realistic look, adding a hint of cartooniness can really help it age. Life is Strange is almost 10 years old and it looks great. Shame about that writing, though. Something which I'm glad started to die off in the latter half of the 2010s are pre-rendered cutscenes. Human Revolution is one of the biggest offenders in this area. The game itself looks pretty good now thanks to them blending realism with a unique style, but the cutscenes, oh my god. They're extremely compressed, they're baked in post-processing, and they look nothing like the actual game. The cutscenes look like they were left in a piss-fueled deep fryer overnight. Pre-rendered cutscenes probably seem like a great idea on the surface. The player doesn't have to spend resources rendering the scene themselves. It lets you show sequences that their hardware couldn't normally handle, for the time, and it means you don't have to include those animations and assets in the game. Unfortunately, they always age poorly, typically run at a lower frame rate than most PCs can manage, especially after a few years, and the cutscene files are usually so bloated in size that they super do not make up for the assets that you don't have to include in the retail game. That is, assuming you actually remove those assets from retail. It feels like just about every game is looking to buy up as much disk space as physically possible that it wants to be the only game you have installed. When it gets to the point that you need a fresh hard drive to store one game on it, There is pretty clearly a problem, right? Like, I'm not insane. Like, right, this is clearly a problem. And you might think, well, modern games are incredibly complex. They need all of that hard drive space, which is just a lie. If Deep Rock can manage to be 3 gigs and FTL is a quarter of a gig, you can compress your files. Even TF2, a game which gets frequent updates, and did for a decade, is not even 25 gig. It's a game which pioneered the best looking art style I have ever seen in my entire life, and they only had to use the world's worst map editor to make that file size happen. Also, Versus Saxon Hail is official now? That's bizarre. The original Titanfall is what I would point to as having begun the horrendous trend of bloated file sizes. It's kind of quaint to look back at 9-year-old articles that refer to its 48 gig size as gargantuan, and 2/3 of that was needlessly uncompressed audio. I don't know if devs just concluded this was the new standard or what, but it's how things have been since. It's provably needless as well, because while Hitman 1 was 70 gig, and Hitman 2 150, Hitman 3, which includes both previous games and an entire extra game on top with all of the 3 games extra content included as well, is almost the exact same size as the first game alone. This also might be a hotter take than Venus, but I don't really think the new Modern Warfare games even look all that great. Sure, technically, it's very impressive, but I'd take the look of Modern Warfare 2 any day, and that is not just rose-tinted glasses. Its art direction was, in my opinion, infinitely more engaging and enjoyable to look at with its bright environments and texture quality that doesn't make my hard drive scream. The modern Warfares usually lie too much on the dull, muddy, and gray side for me. How tessellated the ground is, believe it or not, does not impact my experience. My frame rate does. Frankly, I don't even think the older Modern Warfares look that bad these days. For realistic early 2010s games, the original Modern Warfare trilogy has probably aged some of the best. The environments are a bit boxy and the invisible walls goddamn omnipresent, but visually I still think it looks fantastic. Boxy environment design I also don't think is objectively bad, as it helps keep frame rates high. Also, it means devs don't get needlessly overworked to make incredibly over-detailed environments that no one but 3Clicks Philip and me will appreciate. You know how the gaming industry has been obsessed with ray tracing for the last few years? This is absolutely baffling to me because we don't need it. Game devs have constantly invented new ways to mimic the way that reality looks in ways that are great for performance, and they're good enough at cheating that no one notices. Jumping straight from pre-baked lighting to real-time ray tracing is like deciding that your greatsword ain't cutting it anymore, and instead opting for a fucking lightsaber. I'm glad that Valve, at the very least, has actively rejected this. CS2 still uses cube maps, which are a 4-decade-old technology at this point. They basically display an entirely pre-calculated image of the lighting in the room and use it to make reflections of stuff look adequate. Go to the aforementioned Clickerton for details, I'm not that smart. And you know what using cube maps does? It means that frame rates still stay high because all the work has already been done for your PC, and when done correctly, it basically looks without perfection. Even when they aren't perfect, the only people that care are pedants. Going for ray tracing instead of alternative lighting methods is like trying to cook steak with a jet engine. Yeah, it'll probably work, but are you sure that it's worth it? That's a good way to summarize this video as a whole, actually. Yes, obviously, better technical graphics will often look better, asterisk, but are they worth it when there are better solutions? When even a little bit of artistic flair can make something age just that much better. If Enemy Within had tried to go full-on realistic, it'd probably look like crap, but they made it just a hint cartoony and it still looks great. And yes, I did find a way to bring up XCOM in this video. I'm bringing up Human Revolution again because it's a perfect example, and also I have a lot of footage of it on my hard drive. It got followed up by Mankind Divided, which, get this, I don't own because I played it for 30 minutes at 10 FPS and it was 40 gig. This is, of course, subjective, but I personally believe that it looks way worse than Human Revolution because instead of sticking with HR's unique style, they made it look more photorealistic, which makes any visual imperfection stand out way more. The beautiful takedown animations juxtaposed with the extremely boxy environment stand out like crazy, at least for me. When I was walking through Detroit or Hengsha, I never felt like this because it was intentionally not attempting to look truly realistic. I suppose it's that classic conundrum where the more you try to do, the more there is to criticize. Incidentally, the art style choice behind Human Revolution makes it so much more readable. Everything is lit and visible, whereas in Mankind Divided, every other room is unbelievably dark, which It is realistic, but it's also horrible. I'm not even going to add a clarifying statement here like, you might like it. No, I hate this, and so should you. Let me see what is going on. What do I think makes Human Revolution look good? Well, the lighting is definitely a significant part. Simply letting me see the environment by not making it unbelievably dark will always make it look so much better. Character art design also looks really good, and next to Dishonored, these are the only two games I've played where people don't necessarily look like people, but they also don't cross into the uncanny valley of looking like super creepy Ken dolls. Lastly would probably be chalked up to the art design of the game as a whole. It's based on reality, sure, but everything is super glossy and polished to a mirror shine that, while not particularly realistic, does make everything significantly more visually appealing. The 7th gen graphics effect, as I've come to dub it, comes about thanks to how newer engines have put a lot of work into making textures and surfaces be made of accurate materials, which, in layman's terms, means making the lighting look more realistic on the environment. Games from the early 2010s tend to have very basic lighting, relative, and it ends up making things look rather plasticky, but as a trade-off, I can actually see what's going on. This change in fidelity is, among other things, due to the introduction of PBR, or physically based rendering, as an industry standard, which you can find out more about in this card if you're interested. Techniques like this weren't unheard of in something like Human Revolution, they've been around for decades, and you can even see it here on the ground, but in general, light interacts with surfaces like concrete, doors, cubicle walls, and even Jensen's arsenal very similarly. Ultimately, the great darkening of modern games falls on art and level designers a lot more than it does PBR. It's a great technology in its own right, but it has to be properly harnessed. For example, this pistol has uncomplicated, clear lighting and each surface is lit uniformly, and it makes it look like a toy due to its lack of imperfections. CS? Lighting on the AK has obvious grooves and spots where the lighting is more pronounced due to normal maps. But even though CS heavily relies on these techniques, CS2 is still incredibly readable because Valve has taken a lot of steps to make it that way. Unless your game is like, literally Dead Space, I should probably be able to see what's going on. And modern technology makes darkness a much easier trap to fall into. I enjoy the look of older titles thanks to their simple, much less complicated visuals that makes everything so much easier to read, and I wish developers of more modern titles would lean more on unique art styles rather than pure realism, both to keep their games interesting to look at and ensure they stay small on space. I can't be the only one with these opinions either. After all, there was a little spark of indie lightning recently which has captivated a lot of people. BattleBit literally looks like a Roblox mod, but its small download size, meager price, impressive mechanics, and easily readable art style catapulted it past proper Battlefield and even Call of Duty, landing itself the top 10 most played game on Steam at time of writing. Hopefully, it's the start of a new trend. Thanks to all my patrons, you're all quite wonderful people. Love you all, and good night.